Okay, time to jump into After Effects and look at some of these projects a little bit more up close and personal, okay? Now, I want to say right away, when it comes to Keyframe Killer, that I messed up a little bit, okay? My apologies. I should have explained to you guys that when you save an After Effects project that has type in it and send it to somebody else, like me, for example, if I don't have the typefaces that you used, it will open up and it will substitute a typeface for it, which is what we're going to see in a bunch of these projects because I forgot to ask you guys for your fonts. So when I open these up, they're going to look different from how people intended them because the fonts are going to change. It's going to shift things all over the place. So my bad. Okay. Just so you know, I'm still just want to talk about the animation. So that's more of a design thing in many cases. So it doesn't really matter. But when I open the projects up, you'll see that this happens a lot, which is that I don't have these fonts and it's kind of got like to substitute something in here for me. Now, I will say there is something that you guys can do for me that would make it a little bit easier and actually is necessary, okay, for me to open these projects well. Now, definitely if you include the fonts, that would be great, and then I wouldn't have this problem. But as you can see up here, I've got all these kind of elements missing. And I know we went over this in the kind of like 5 dumb things or 6 dumb things that'll trip you up in After Effects, but in order to avoid this, so like some of the elements it's okay not to include because it's like the Photoshop document, which I already have because I gave it to you guys in the first place. But in this case, if it's anything that you've made or imported that I don't have, the color palette's probably fine and I don't need that. But like this PNG here, I assume that's something important. This gunshot is probably just an audio effect because it says MP4, I guess. I don't know what these things are, but I can't reconnect them because I don't know where that art is. So if you guys, when you save your projects for me, if you've introduced any new elements, please do this, which is to go up to File, Dependencies, and Collect Files, okay? And then make sure it says for all comps. And then when you hit Collect, what it's going to do is it's going to basically have you put it in a folder. It's going to, ask you where you want to put it and give it a name, and then it'll just collect all of the assets and everything that is part of the project up into one folder, which you could then, zip up and put that up in the homework locker, right? So that would make things a little bit easier for me, and I should have definitely mentioned that about the fonts, but and about collecting the project sooner. So my bad. Okay, so when we go through some of these Epic Lyric Smackdown projects, it's not going to be quite right because this isn't the way that this person, wanted it to look because this is the wrong font. And you can see that like the masking that this person has done is like making this look all sorts of weird and stuff. So yeah, my bad. So I apologize. But I did want to talk about this one thing, which is really cool here. And it was kind of like this really ingenious kind of beginner solution to something, which I thought was really, really fun. So this person wants to have the type pop up sort of in the middle here, which I think is a great idea because it doesn't have to move very far. I kind of just talked about this, right? So you can have a slower animation. And what they did is they just sort of basically like put a background solid on top that kind of starts right here. It looks like it's cut right here. And yeah, and like they just basically move the type up from underneath this solid, which like that's the kind of thing I remember doing like right when I first started out. And it actually, I think it's great because it totally works. The reason why I'd say like professionals probably don't do this is because, just sort of dumb things. Like if you all of a sudden, if your client asks you to change this background color and you've done this like a million times throughout the whole thing, then you also have to remember to change the color of the solid that's on top of things. And it like could create an extra step or whatever. But I want to show you guys a different way of doing something that's like really similar. Okay, so whoops, that is not right. So let me make a new composition and make it the right way. Teacher error. Okay, so here we go. So, and let me make some sample type here. Okay, and let me make this bigger. Easier to see. Right. So I've got some sample type, and I want this to pop up. And sort of what this person did, just in case it wasn't clear, is they made a new solid, and they made it... okay, I need to make this... I'll just copy this. Sometimes when it's your background color and not an actual solid, it won't let you copy it, which is kind of irritating. So I'm just gonna kind of make this solid into the one that I want. Okay, great. So now that's on top. And let me move it down here, right? So what this person did, in case it wasn't clear, though I just totally blew it, is they had the type kind of pop up from underneath a solid under there, right? So it looks like that, right? Which is really cool, but not necessarily the way I would have done it. So I kind of want to show like how I would have done this instead, okay? And that probably involves something. I'm going to show two different methods, and it involves two things that we haven't talked about yet, but we're definitely going to talk about in upcoming lessons. So in case this doesn't make sense, just bear with me here. Okay, so I'm going to remove this solid, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my rectangle tool up here to make a new shape, and I just need to make this a solid, and here's what I can do. I can just put this right here, okay? As long as it's covering the word sample type, that's great. And what I'm going to do now is call this a mat, all right? And now, because this is on top of this other layer here, it always has to be on top, but what we can do is, if this, by the way, if this isn't pressed, you need to press this button here to show this. And we talk about this TRK-MAT, or track mat, the world's most sad little abbreviation there, I think. Okay, but what we want to do is make this block here an alpha mat for the type layer, okay? Because the alpha channel of this layer right here now says that wherever we could see this pink color, there's full alpha information, and wherever we can't see it, like around here, there's no alpha information, right? So if we want this sample type to appear just where inside that box, we can do this thing where we make a track mat of it, which is an alpha mat, okay, of this. And this layer has to be on top, and this layer has to be on bottom, but if I do that and I set an alpha mat, boom, now we can see the layer through it. And what we're doing is we're restricting this to just the size of this mat here, okay? So when this moves down now, it also disappears from screen, right? And the cool thing about that is that, you know, you don't have to like ever change the colors or anything to make that work, right? So track mats are awesome, alpha mats are awesome, and if that didn't make sense to you, don't sweat it. Now I'm gonna show you one other thing, and that's an effect called set mat, which kind of does the same thing, but I wanna show you this. So I've got my mat here, right? Same as before. And what I can do is go to my sample type and go up to effect and let's see, where is it? Channel. It's set effect, channel, and set mat, okay? And what that does is now this allows me to select a mat that I want my sample type to be affected by. Okay, so check this out. And let me space this out a little bit more here. So take mat from layer, and I want to change this to my mat, okay? And now, with that set as the mat, believe it or not, okay, and this is now off, this just goes behind that, and it uses the alpha information, again, the alpha channel information from this box here, this mat, to reveal this type, okay? So rather than the solid on top, I think you could have used one of these methods, and that probably would have worked too. Great. So awesome job here. I think this is really killer, and let's move on to the next one. Okay, here we have another project from a student, and I think this one's also really great. And it's just got like a lot of really fun animation going on in here, and a lot of details and like video layers, and you know, this person just really went off and brought in lots of additional elements, and I love it. I thought it was great. I did want to talk about this one moment and how to improve this just a little bit. I thought this was like actually a really fun, really great moment. Here, let me preview this for you guys. And, you know, this is one of my favorite parts of it, but I thought it could have used a little bit of tweaking, so I wanted to show you what I would do with this. Easy yourself. Easy yourself. Okay, let me turn the audio down there. Actually going to turn that layer off, the audio. Okay, so I think this is a really fun move, and obviously, you know, he's kind of creating this situation where the keyframes are like wheels on a car, and the car is made out of easy. It's like really clever, right? I just thought that the action could have been a little bit clearer here, okay? Let's open these and press U to reveal our keyframes. And so this person's definitely using some eases, as you can see here by these keyframes, and also not some eases. They've got some linear keyframes and ease keyframes all kind of like working together. And I actually think that you kind of see, you can pretty easily see this. So like for this keyframe wheel here, right? There's no ease on it, and for the word ease, this is going to get confusing, there is ease on it, so watch the relationship between the keyframe and the word ease as it moves. See that? It kind of shifts all over the place, and it's because, you know, an ease keyframe gives a slow out and a slow in. We haven't really talked about this yet, but that's what ease keyframes do. And linear keyframes, these normal diamond ones that we've been working with, they just move the same rate at every frame. So you create a little bit of a disturbance here between the layers by not having them all ease the same, okay? So what I'm just gonna do is grab these and press F9, and that will put some ease on. And now let's just see if it's just generic ease. Let's look at the relationship now. Yeah, and you must have just used kind of a generic ease too, because AKA didn't adjust the ease in the graph editor, which is something we'll talk about later in case you're totally getting lost by this. But here, even just this, let's see what the difference that made. Okay, so it's pretty minor actually, but it all holds together a little bit more. But what I thought was that this comes over and then it slows down, but then it immediately drops down. And I just wanted to show how, like, this looks like this now, right? But I think this could be a little bit clearer if there was a little bit of a pause here before this drops down, right? Even if it's just like 4 or 5 frames, okay? So that's what I'm gonna build, and I'll show you guys the difference. So I'm just gonna take these, and I'm gonna copy and paste them, and I'm gonna take these and copy and paste them, etc., right? Now I'm just making that pause there, the one we've talked about a bunch of times. And then, let's see, how many frames is this? This is like 1, 2, 3, 4 frames. That's probably a good pause. And then all it goes like 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe more frames to take all these keyframes and all these, okay, and just move these down to here. And I think I'd probably have to trim this here. I'm not sure what that layer is. Oh, it's yourself. Okay, so probably not. So check this out. Right? So and then so it comes over and then pauses and falls. So it's like just a little bit clearer of an action. Now that pause might be too long. Okay, so maybe we could take all this and pull this back even a little bit more, just 2 frames even, and we'll make sure to pull that back as well. Right? And now what we could do is actually adjust this so that as it moves down now, boom, it kind of first we could take all these keyframes and put them into the graph editor. Again, this is not something we've done, but if you press this button, you can go into your graph editor. And then what I'm going to suggest here is that we go to the speed graph, and then this kind of maps the speed of the animation. And right here, this is pretty much just a generic easy ease. So what we can do, and again, this is getting really advanced, is we can kind of pull these out there, and especially at the end here, we can really have this settle down into a nice slow stop before adjusting again. So let's see what that would look like. Right? I think that's kind of funny, and maybe it's a little bit too exaggerated now with this, but I think it makes the action a little bit clearer if it's separated, the position and then the fall down, and it's just a tiny little pause in there to make it work, all right? So I thought this was a tremendous, awesome animation that you did. Lots of variety, lots of great animation going on. I just wanted to point out that one thing, okay? Just little pauses are not just for your making keyframes exercises, but anytime you can add a little pause, well, not anytime, but a lot of times if you add a little pause, you can make the action just a little bit clearer, right? So it's just 1, 2, okay? And let's move on to the next one. Okay, here we have another project by a student, and another one that's really excellent. I wanted to point out this one transition here, and just show how I can make this a little bit stronger. So here is the animation, and again, this isn't the font that this student chose, so this definitely looks messed up, but doesn't matter, don't think about that. Okay, here's the transition. You better stop watching. Cool, so what happens here is, I'm sorry that was so loud, is that the letters and this red background kind of pull back. And then what happens here is that, these letters pull up or whatever, but the stopwatch, in this case, it just kind of fades on. So it's, fading on is fine, but in and of itself as an animation, it's a little bit boring, right? Because it's just fading on. So if we could add a little bit of love to this, I think we can make this a little bit better. So here's a trick that I like to do, which is to kind of reinforce the scale down here. That's going to happen right here. And let's look at all of these. I'm going to press U. Okay, so here's where that animation happens right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my stopwatch, and that's kind of fading up, and I'm going to take the fade up off of it, and I'm going to pull this back so that it's right here, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a transition where this scales down also. So it scales down at the same time that the words and red solid are scaling down, okay? So what I would do is press S and then make a stopwatch keyframe and go back to the beginning here. And I kind of have to figure out how big to make this, okay? And it looks like the anchor point is right in the center of the frame, so that's good. And this button needs to be turned on. So I can make this just like this big, for example, and let's see what happens. Maybe like this big, so it's sort of like basically, covering or not covering the letters except for right here in the middle. And I'm going to turn the audio off. It probably doesn't matter. And let's see what this looks like, just these two elements. Right? You see that? It's like, it just immediately, like, you don't really, you don't really necessarily feel it like popping on there because it's already starting to move and everything's like moving. What I think I could do to make this better actually is to pull this now, the timings on this back a couple of frames, like 2 or something, just so the red and the type starts moving first. Let's see what that feels like. Right? It's just got a little bit more, like the beginning and end of the transition are connected, right? And now, just because I'm talking about E's a whole bunch here, and I'm jumping ahead for this oatmeal, I'm going to press F9 and put some E's on these, right? And then go into my graph editor real quick with those selected. And then I'm going to choose my speed graph, which I think in this case is easier. And I'm going to turn off this expressions editor. Not sure why that's on. Okay, and so here's my animation here. Oh, and I'm going to turn this on too, so it all fits on screen. Okay, cool. So here we have the beginning of the move here, and then the stopwatch move here. So what I'd like to do is just adjust these all so that the movement's all about even on beginning and end. Okay, whoops. And grab this and do this. And now for some reason the green part of the scale didn't want to move with that, so I'm going to kind of like put that in there and rough that in. Okay, so let's see what that looks like now with some E's on it. Yeah. It's super cool. Now, what am I seeing here is maybe this now disappears a little bit too quickly, so I'd probably pull this back. But you get this idea that you can make that transition. Oh, I see. It's this. Yep. So you can make that transition there just a little bit nicer that way. Right? So I think that's really fun. Multiple things scaling at the same time, especially quickly, especially when you ease the heck out of them, could just be really effective. Like, it's just really hard to see where that animation stops and starts because it just works so perfectly. And I will say that everything should have the anchor point in the center when doing this, okay? Otherwise it won't work, right? Cool. So that's the keyframe killer project exercises. And now let's jump into the Knowles neckties projects.